episode 4.
Mhm.
Wow. That was emotional. I wasn't really expecting it to be. I mean, I don't know. I didn't have any expectations as a player. I'm still trying to approach it with, no thoughts in mind. Just go with the flow kind of thing. But
Mhm. Yeah, when I was putting together this session, um, I really wanted to dive into the trauma that Quinn experienced. So I really tried to capture like those feelings that you go through with survivor's guilt. Um, a little bit of the PTSD aspect of it, in regard to like compartmentalizing those feelings. Um, and I think Quinn outside of their head is so controlled and so like meticulous in everything they do that it's
Mhm.
almost a way of denial for the fear that they actually have inside. So I really wanted to open it up that Quinn has to deal with their fears, their trauma, um, the survivor's guilt of making this agreement so that way they survived while Celine and Alaric passed away.
yeah, the fear was a really big piece for me too. It seems like a kind of core character detail or kind of like a pivotal point
Mhm.
for Quinn, like the flaw that Quinn needs to overcome, um, or that Quinn feels they need to overcome. Anyways, that was the one thing that I connected with when thinking about like preparing for portraying Quinn was like we talked about this a little bit last time.
Yeah.
The reason for agreeing to the pact, the reason for pursuing magic is for the power they provide in the hopes of overcoming this sort of internal fear of one's own weakness.
Hmm.
And I think it will be a long road for Quinn to fully deal with that, to process those feelings and come to some any kind of resolution on them, if that's even possible. Who knows? But to even like begin addressing, let alone like healing that kind of like central hurt.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I said, is a long road, but it's like a central motivator. Um, and when you're directly diving into like your own sort of subconscious, it is the one thing that I think Quinn will inevitably kind of confront, probably time and time again, um, is that their fear is behind so much of their decision making and
Mhm.
possibly so much of what kind of gets them into the situations they're maybe trying to avoid.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of who Quinn is too, is and it's not just the fear of the unknown, but it's that fear of failure.
Yeah.
Um, which is why I really wanted to make sure that the encounter, while there was some combat aspect, there was definitely an opportunity to like bring Celine to like no HP and kind of like knock her out. But it was important to also leave it open that Quinn had the opportunity to actually reason with this memory as a way of coming to terms with their own guilt.
You did a really good job of making that apparent as an option.
Mhm.
Um, because that's not something I feel like a lot of like it's kind of the classic. like D&D thing, right? Like if
Yeah.
given the option for violence, the players will just choose violence and beat everything into submission if they can. But I like combat that can be resolved through role play.
Mhm.
And so it was pretty apparent that that's kind of what you were going for, and I really appreciated that. Um, but all at the same time, thinking in the terms of Quinn, who is typically a very rational being, at what is perhaps their most vulnerable inside themselves, being confronted with their deepest fears.
Mhm.
Um, like all reason is abandoned. There
Yeah.
is, you are face to face with only your deepest emotions. So for me, Quinn's attempts to use reason and ration there were limited. Um, and again, fear was in the driver's seat, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of it too is because Quinn does rely so much on reason and rationale. It was important for me to actually create something that allowed Quinn to be emotional, to actually acknowledge like, hey, there is something deeper here. Um that's more than just this pragmatic logical person that I am. I have depth as a being, and where is the safest place to express that besides in your own head?
I think the setting served as really fantastic. I don't know if this is intentional or not, because it also ties into the kind of Lovecraftian mythos
Mhm.
themes that we're working with, but the setting of underwater and the pressure of the depths and all of those things, I think, are
Yeah.
really great metaphor for a rational person being consumed by um, their emotions as well.
Yeah, and it was
So I don't know if you planned that, but
totally
if you didn't,
intentional.
okay,
um,
yeah, it was great.
yeah. Well, and I was pulling a lot. So one the big thing that makes Lovecraftian horror the way what it is, and a big theme of it is that vast unknown. Um, it's feeling small in a greater scheme. So it's really important to me when I was putting together both this session and last session to really intertwine that theme into these two, because this is the opportunity to really illustrate it. This is where it makes sense in the narrative for our characters to feel like tiny beings and something vast and unknowable. Um, but also, I really pulled a lot too from um, my studies in psychology and my background in therapy and counseling, as far as what are what are things that are naturally scary. And a lot of that is the dark, being in new or unknown situations, and sometimes just yourself. So I really wanted to intertwine all of that together in the last two sessions for sure. Because I felt like it really sets the scene for exactly how we start to see Quinn's mind splinter.
Yeah, I'm still kind of reflecting on the whole thing, the whole experience. I perhaps I got too into it because I I felt that on like a very visceral kind of way. It was a quite a journey. The very end was really impactful for me. Just the I'm having multiple thoughts at once, so bear with me for a second.
It's all good.
I have to interject that I had the player knowledge of like knowing who's on the other side of the
Hmm.
door in Quinn's apartment.
Yeah.
So I was trying to ignore that, but even knowing who's on the other side of the door, I still had this like sort of sense of wonder and dread as
Mhm.
Quinn in that experience, feeling somewhat safe and comfortable in my apartment, but at the same time recognizing that this is not really my home. I'm in a different space. It's being changed and affected by someone else. Um, and I just spent, what felt like perhaps an eternity
Mhm.
confronting my own kind of like suffocating emotions and like all of that weight bearing down. So when that door opened, when I decided to open the door and let this being in, it was like an overwhelming sense of relief. And I felt like Reeve was like a savior. And as us, the storytellers, I think we're well aware of the fact that like Reeve isn't necessarily the savior. This is, like you mentioned, a fracturing um, of a psyche, which I think happens to people sometimes as a way of protecting,
Yeah.
an injured mind. Um, and it works as a mechanism for a time, but it isn't always, in the person's best interest. Particularly in our story, it might not be in the person's best interest because this
Yeah.
isn't just like, dissociative identity disorder. This is like a supernatural
Right.
element to it as well, where there's someone else pulling the strings behind the scenes. So it was weird to like have knowledge of the fact that like, oh, this feels like I'm being saved, but at the same time also know that I am very much not being saved. I'm in danger. Like,
Yeah, you got that Simpsons like Ralph sitting there.
yeah,
I'm in danger. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And I think that's too like a big part of it with dissociative identity disorder. A lot of the alters are formed as a result of the prime personality trying to protect themselves. And what they see is that this alter comes in and they take over essentially when the prime can no longer grasp or deal with what they're doing. And
Mhm.
it's not about whether this alter is good or bad. It's they are a stand-in for that situation. Um, so I think the thing that I'm really curious, and I really intentionally left this open, is whether or not Quinn is going to remember this when they come to fruition and they come back into reality, whatever that situation is that brings them back. And I think that's very much going to be a player choice. Like when we are in that moment, we get to decide, do we recall this? Do we remember this? Or does Quinn still not grasp the intensity of the situation that they're in?
Mhm.
And they're still trying to block it out because they're still not coping with their trauma.
I like that so far we're leaving a lot of these decisions up. So we talked before about,
Mm-hmm.
DMs, railroading, etc.
Yeah.
We, I think, are doing a really good job of leaving some of these kind of like pivotal key character decisions up to the person in the player's chair at the time.
Oh,
They
for
maybe
sure.
don't seem like key decisions in the moment, like
Mm-hmm.
choosing whether or not you as Quinn or you as Reeve get to remember X, Y, or Z doesn't maybe seem like a huge weight carrying decision.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get to determine whether or not that decision has consequences in the future, it becomes a more relevant decision or not. Uh, and like I feel like you already have taken things and run with them based off of choices that I made just in last session as Reeve. So like seeing that we both get to kind of equally affect the outcome from both chairs
Mm-hmm.
is a really unique take on storytelling too, because we are still kind of constantly dually directing the story, which has been really fun so far because it
Yeah.
somehow seems to open up the doors even more in different directions.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and a lot of the stuff from last session, because I had already had this session written out before I actually
Mhm.
wrote last session. So I already was like, okay, I know what I'm doing with this one. Um, But then I had done that like switch. I was like, oh wait, we probably need to tell this story and we need to, explain where Reeve came from. So when you made the decision to chuck the journal into the void, I was like, oh shit, that's going to totally play into Quinn's psyche. Like, Quinn's going to find this. Because originally I'd only planned for like the vanity mirror to show there. But the journal going into the void, I was like, Reeve is trying to call out and may not realize that they are making the connections between the two of them. And this is going to be a consequence that Quinn is going to see when they come to the mental apartment, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think there's something like really cool about that, like being able to go, oh, I'm going to pull this from last session. This is something that is I didn't plan on and I didn't anticipate, but I think that the impact needs to be seen to remember exactly what this is. And I like that now Quinn realizes that their closest guarded secrets and desires are now accessible in their where they feel safe. They had originally locked it away in this academy in their mind that was supposed to keep those desires safe, secure, untouchable. And now they're not secured anymore.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to confront what that is and what that looks like.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes.
For sure. I also made a very on the wind decision with the confrontation with Celine. That was originally supposed to be Ulrich.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
As we were going through and as we were going through the library, I realized that Quinn formed more of a bond with Celine, especially seeing her demise specifically in front of them.
Yeah.
And it was so violent that I was like, this would have more of an impact than I think Ulrich.
Mm-hmm.
So I very much like on a whim decided, like as you were going into the rotunda, I was like,
Was
we're
when you
switching this
just
now.
oh shit.
So like all my notes, it says Ulrich, and I was like, okay, flipping it.
That was a good choice. It was really impactful. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it would have had the same weight with Alaric.
Yeah.
I mean, not because we really, he's essentially been dead the whole story. We never
Mm-hmm.
really met him. Um, so as far as connection with a character we've met, that was
Yeah.
certainly the stronger choice. Um, and damn, I really like Celine too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we've talked about this in our recaps yet, but I
No, we haven't.
told you before session one, I think it was before session one, maybe it was after, that I wanted to write a character that was going to die at the very beginning.
Yeah.
In the hopes that like our audience would meet a character, like them, and then lose them. Because I want to set the expectation that like anything
No
can
one's
happen
safe.
in this story. And literally, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
anything can happen. Our main character has died already also, so.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked Celine so much that I'm sad to see her go at the same time. So it sort of fell victim to my own trap, I think.
No, I mean, I
And you
felt that
turned it back
too.
on me because it pulled at my heartstrings.
I, I mean, like as the player, when I was playing as Quinn, even though Celine was very no nonsense and very like, I'm here to get shit done, I think that appealed to Quinn. And that was something that Quinn appreciated and valued, because those are traits that Quinn also tries to exemplify. But she exemplifies this like, I'm here to get shit done, but she was so strong. And I think that was something that Quinn greatly desires. And I think Quinn probably even got like a little bit of a crush on Celine. And then having her suddenly no longer there, I think that it was way more important to me, at least, to say this is someone that Quinn did have a connection with,
Hmm.
even if it was brief. Um, and Quinn does have a hard time building connections because Quinn's known Marin for years, went to
Right.
school alongside them, been working alongside them, um, and still views Marin as more of an associate or colleague versus a friend, which I'm curious to see how that will grow now.
Hmm. Right, with Marin acting as an almost sort of like steward or guardian in a way
Yeah.
in the near future potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree. I think Quinn is the kind of person that might be, this is probably new to Quinn, but maybe kind of easily fascinated by a person who exemplifies some of the traits that they maybe
Mm-hmm.
kind of secretly covet.
Yeah.
Celine like exemplifies this easy internal confidence, and like her own capabilities, which
Yep.
is probably something Quinn wishes they had more of.
Mm-hmm.
So to see somebody kind of so at ease with themselves, interact with the world in such a kind of easy and commanding way, I feel like you're right. Like they would kind of instantly have a little bit of like a, oh, damn, she's cool. Like,
Yeah. Just a little bit of an attraction, like that little spark.
yeah.
um, but I also think interacting with Celine during that first session, that informed some of the choices I made as Reeve too. Because I realized that Quinn did admire these features. I was like, oh, Quinn really looks up to Celine and has an admiration for her. This is probably what Quinn would also want.
Hmm.
So Reeve is going to step in and be that being for Quinn and start
Hmm.
taking on those traits and characteristics, which is why I think it's important when playing Reeve, and you did it so well in last session, this easy confidence, this brashness that they're willing to just do what it takes and not being afraid to go into a situation maybe not fully prepared or um, just going for it.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, you did a great job at that also, which is I think why I kind of picked up on those traits a little bit more. Um, I don't know that we explicitly defined Reeve as a like outwardly confident person. We talked about them being a more powerful person, a more
Mm-hmm.
capable person. Um, so I think your interpretation as, yeah, this being is more self-assured and is aware of their abilities, even despite the fact that all these abilities are new to this person. Um, they're aware of their inherent power,
Mm-hmm.
and your depiction of that, I mean, is what really I think is kind of growing both of our characters, honestly, because
Yeah.
I feel like the both of them become more defined kind of the longer we carry on. Like we round them out, we flesh them out more each time we play them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
I don't
I
know.
think that's kind of one of the cool things about switching too, because there's like, I don't know what to call it, like aha epiphany moments where it's like, oh yeah, this makes sense as the character. And then being able to pull on that later. Yeah, again, just like some of the notes, like when you were playing Quinn and Reeve, I was like, oh yeah, I need to make sure like I start incorporating that more when we go into it next session. So,
It's just kind of cool. I feel like this is probably the fastest pace to like develop a character in a
mm-hmm.
campaign, right? Because in a normal setting with a full table, the focus isn't really on character growth. Not always, anyways. There's some, but it is at a much slower pace because
Yeah.
the individual stories take a backseat to the group story.
Mm-hmm.
All we really have is the individual story here, so we get to really grow these at such a, yeah, just a faster rate. And it just gives us the opportunity to explore so much more and get to know them on like a much more personal level, which is really cool.
Yeah. And it really is like one of the things that I was really excited about with doing this is I have not been a person who has gotten an opportunity to do a lot of role play when I uh either as a player character or as a DM, honestly.
Yeah.
So actually getting to like, okay, cool, I get to challenge myself and push myself into this. Um, I was not like a big theater kid either when I was younger, but I freaking loved it. Like I took theater classes and drama classes, but I wasn't someone who always like put myself on out on stage. So this has been something that's been very cool as far as like pushing myself to do something new, to try something, to actually have that opportunity to like seek into character and explore what that looks like. Um, because I like building complex characters, but oftentimes I don't get to play into that when we do full table games.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I'm sure I've said this before. To me, role playing or acting or improv, any of the above, are all just really like fascinating ways to explore yourself more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a like to express yourself, but to understand yourself better through understanding others. Like
Yeah.
I think anybody who plays D&D long enough like will naturally become a more empathetic person, because if unless you're playing with assholes all the time, but like if you're playing with a group of normal people, you will, even if you were to play with the same group of friends for 20 years, in that amount of time, I feel like you will meet so many different versions of yourself and your friends along those journeys that you will naturally become a more open minded, worldly version of you in everyday life that makes you more capable of relating to and understanding, the world around you and the people around you.
Mm.
And all it takes is to just spend a couple hours a week pretending to be somebody else. Like, and it's fun.
Yeah.
Who
Well, and
knew
it's
that like thinking about others is fun? But
yeah, well, and it's literally putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Like
yeah.
we say that all the time. Um, but I think you nailed it. Being able to be someone else or play with other people and have these shared experiences, it builds empathy as a collective. And I think that is something that is so important as a just human being, is having empathy for others, being willing to see others' perspectives. And I really encourage people to get into tabletop RPGs as young as possible,
Yeah.
because I think it's such a great way to build so many skills, and it encourages things like creativity, imagination, um, math skills.
Yeah, for real. Adding on the fly.
Oh yeah, I love it when when I get to cast like a really high level spell and I'm like, oh god, okay, so I'm rolling 8d6, gotta add these up real quick, plus whatever my modifier is.
Right.
But it also encourages you to learn how to be a cooperative person,
Hmm.
how to participate in a team, and how to navigate complex situations and get creative with problem solving. Um, when my kiddo told me, like, oh yeah, hey mom, I'm gonna join a tabletop RPG club at my school, I was like, yes, absolutely, do it. Um, it just from when we would play at home, getting to see how excited they were when we were playing, I was like, this is really great. Not just for their interpersonal development, but also for creating bonds. And I think that's the other thing that is really exciting about tabletop RPGs is creating community.
Yeah.
I mean, even just with like a duet game, I think we have a great appreciation for each other as DMs and as players. And I think that mutual respect has created such a great bond of community for us. And I think it's something that we both want to share with other people. Be like, hey, this is why tabletop RPGs are really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So obviously we're recording this because we want to, share this on YouTube and get other people to watch it and whatnot. I would love to be able to build a community around the stories that we tell together.
Mm-hmm.
Even if nobody else ever watches this, I would keep doing this over and over again every week because playing this game is so much fun to me and
Mm-hmm.
is such a worthwhile endeavor just for the reasons that we discussed. Like if all that ever comes out of this is just becoming a happier, more empathetic person, then that's all that is required of it. Like,
Yes, 110%. I totally agree with that. And I think that's the other thing too. Like, yeah, we want other people to see this. We want to spread the good word, if you will. But I think it's filling our cup. And that's something that is so important, to be a more holistic person and to demonstrate empathy and caring and compassion. You have to have a cup to pour from.
mm-hmm.
So I think it's fulfilling for both of us. And I think that's also part of why both of us are incredibly passionate about creating these stories and this community. I mean, because we don't just have it in this realm of Table for Two. We have other ways that we touch base and we share community. We have another full table game that we play together.
Mm-hmm.
We're both in touch with the tabletop RPG community in different ways. Um, but I think one of the coolest things is I know that for me personally, I have built some incredible friendships through the tabletop RPG community. Um, and being able to have those friendships and have those people in my life has been so incredibly impactful.
Yeah, it's life changing. Honestly,
Yeah.
my life made a, I don't want to say 180, but like at least a 90-degree turn
Mhm.
about 8 years ago when I met my partner and started playing D&D. Like probably two of the biggest pivotal things in my life were meeting the person I was meant to be with and
Mhm.
playing D&D with that person.
Which also incredible because your partner is the whole reason we connected, because she was my
Yeah.
best friend in high school.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's wild to me too, because she is such a outgoing extroverted person. Like, that's something I've always respected about her. Um and even though after high school we went different directions, we still managed to keep in touch, and she has always been someone that has been like encouraging. And when she saw that I started making dice and was starting to DM, she was like, hey, reach out, like talk to Nick. He's a great resource. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And getting to watch the stream that you had started with the 86 Club, I was like, oh, this is so cool. um, and I definitely had like a big admiration for your DM style then. And I was like, Nick knows his shit. Holy hell. But getting to form those friendships have been so cool. And it really is like weird circumstance or serendipitous, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, telling stories just makes your story that much richer in some
Mhm.
way. It's honestly, it's like a mind-blowing experience, but it's cool to keep living it.
Yeah.
Shit, I think that's my final thought.
Yeah, I was like, what is our final thought from today? Yeah, it's enrichment through storytelling.
Yeah, 100%.
Mhm. This is why art is important. There we go.
Yeah,
This is why we have art.
yeah. Keep telling stories.
Mhm.
and keep listening to ours.
Yeah.
We will have more.
Uh, so next session, or we're switching, right?
Yes,
Oh
I'll be the
man.
DM again for next session. I'll tell you now, you will be Quinn
Ooh,
next session.
okay.
For anybody paying close enough attention, we left reality as Reeve, so there might be some catching up to do.
I'm super excited and nervous.
Same.
All
All right,
right.
well, we'll see you all when we're someone else.
See you when we're someone else. I'm scared, but in a good way.